I'm Lam Kai Yin from Academy of Visual Arts. My presentation's title is Child Obesity, Gene or Lifestyle. For there is a growing debate about whether obesity is caused by lifestyle or simply by genetics. In this presentation, I have to figure out the major cause of childhood obesity. Childhood body weight is strongly influenced by genes. For my presentation, I will start with a brief introduction of obesity and the debate on the topic. Then I will explain why genetic factors play a bigger role in child obesity. There are three reasons. The first one, a particular gene defect can stop people realizing their full, so they don't know when to stop eating. Secondly, in evolutionary terms, being heavily overweight is much more natural than being thin. Thirdly, people prone to being overweight are often not the types to easily burn fat or be able to control their appetites. Obesity is simply defined as having too much body fat for your particular weight or height. It is usually measured by an internationally recognized system known as body mass index (BMI). It is calculated by comparing your height to your weight. It's quite simple in adults, but in children, the measurement is commonly adjusted depending on age and size. Obese people are often branded overeaters who don't exercise, but there are many different factors that contribute to obesity. An average figure from research studies estimates that obesity is about 40% genetic and 60% due to environmental factors, but there is a lot of variation in the scientific literature that I have studied for this topic. Gene affects our food intake. Martin, an obesity expert, reveals that a wild defect in the MRAP2 gene, a gene that codes for a special satiety protein, may be a cause of early childhood obesity. People who lack this gene are more likely to become obese in early childhood, although a healthy diet and exercise can go a long way towards preventing it. We inherit the genetic defect. The problem with lacking this gene is that it codes for a protein which functions as a link in the signaling pathway for our body's feeling of satiety. If you lack this protein, the satiety signal to the brain will be slower and less clear, eventually resulting in a greater food intake. Surprisingly, the gene also appears to have an effect on how the body processes energy from food. That means how much or little it takes before we gain weight. In fact, when we eat, hormones are released into the bloodstream, which ultimately send a message to the brain saying we are full. Ideally, this process would go smoothly and quickly so as to avoid overeating. For people who lack the gene which codes for the MRAP2 protein, this process is slowed down. Defect boosts our energy storage capacity. The researcher says that this genetic variant may well have given our ancestors an evolutionary advantage. In the old days, in times of food shortage, it was practical to eat more and store the energy in the form of muscles and fat. It was also an advantage that less energy was required to gain weight. Today, this variation is primarily a disadvantage because in this part of the world, there is rarely a need for this stockpiling. It is more than lifestyle. Another professional, lastly, acknowledges that exercise and diet changes are two essential actions that an individual must take to lose weight, but argues that genetically, people prone to being overweight are often not the types to easily burn fat or be able to control their appetites, so it can be harder for them to see the benefits of a healthy lifestyle. Many of them need to exercise excessively and hardly eat at all to manage their weight. And their genetic makeup means they can exercise as much as a scrawny person but struggle to lose weight. And also, as I said before, a particular gene defect can stop people realizing they are full, so they don't know when to stop eating. After my study of this topic, I'm quite sure that there is no one quick fix or easy answer to the problem of obesity. Genetics is part of the equation, but some people definitely find it more difficult to maintain a healthy weight than others. However, although you can't change your genes, you can focus on the environmental factors and make lifestyle changes that have
created using Powtoon.